What's poppin'? At this point, I think it is pretty clear to say that superhero movies are quite possibly the biggest they've ever been. We have 2 cinematic universes, a couple of auteur-driven trilogies in progress, and independent comics that are getting more adaptations than ever before. There really has been no better time than this one to be a superhero fan. And at the height of its popularity, there is one superhero who at this point has become the symbol for everything these modern myths have to bring. And his name is Spider-Man. I meant Spider-Man. Aside from maybe Batman, this is the superhero with the most movies attached to him. And for that reason, he also has a ton of different interpretations. As a result, this also means that there are lots of opinions everywhere on who the best Spider-Man is, and I think no other interpretation is as polarizing and controversial as the latest live-action version, Tom Holland. I remember the hype when he was first announced. Finally, there was a Spider-Man who was actually a teenager and got to interact with the likes of Iron Man, Captain America, Star-Lord, and the whole rest of the MCU. But since his first appearance, the narrative has shifted. Now, people don't like his interconnectivity. People really dislike the fact that he is super early and inexperienced. And more than ever, it seems like people have lost their trust in this guy. And as the years progress and more people turn on this guy, I never switched up. I still, to this day, consider this Spider-Man to be my favorite live-action interpretation of the character. Yes, I am serious. And so what better time than before we see Destin Daniel Cretton's new take on the character than to review the Spider-Man Home Trilogy. And maybe, just maybe, convince you that these are a little bit better than you remember. And guys, I'm not stupid. I know I'm entering the Shark Tank with this one. There is no place more dangerous to express your love for Spider-Man than with Spider-Man fans. But hey, I have the benefit of being a young up-and-coming faceless YouTuber, and so I can have as many insane takes as I want, and I never have to pay the price for it. What the frick? I guess I'm laying it all on the table now. Whatever, let's go. So, with all that out of the way, why don't we start at the beginning? Homecoming is my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie. That's it. That's the opinion. Don't kill me. The hate on this movie especially is the one I have the most trouble believing. It's like I watched a completely different movie to other people. It's among one of the most clever movies in the MCU. It genuinely is pretty funny, and it even has my favorite Marvel movie score ever. Genuinely, I'm surprised no one pays attention to the Michael Giacchino score here. It's so crazy how he can make such a ditzy, low-stakes, hopeful score like this, and then also make a crazy horror-themed soundtrack for Batman 5 years later. He's got crazy range. I love how for the most part, the music is really chill and low-key, which gives you the exact feeling the movie wants of this being a friendly neighborhood adventure. I also really like the chill segments of the main theme and how they can be friendly and heroic at the same time. I kind of think when you're making a Spider-Man movie, the way to go is to make it as friendly and low stakes as possible. And I guess the hot takes don't stop because I am of the opinion that Spider-Man, as a character, does not really belong in movies. Now chill on me, guys. Hear me out. This is a character whose home is the comics. And comic books are a medium where you get the story in chunks, and usually every single issue is self-contained. And I think that's a format that would do much better to the character if it was adapted into a game or a show or something. I think Spider-Verse so far has been the only exception to this. They found a Spider-Man story that is grand in scale that would actually fit the character, and so the medium of film is really fitting for that deconstruction of his mythos. People say that Spider-Man needs to always be a little bit miserable and lonely, but I firmly disagree, because to me, the heart of what makes a good Spider-Man movie is that Peter grows as a character. It's okay if no one close to him gets slimed out, or if he isn't broke, or if there are other people that can help him, as long as Peter is learning more about the balances of being Spider-Man and his principles are being tested. This movie has stakes, guys, and it tests Tom a lot. This entire movie is about Peter learning the consequences of being Spider-Man. But unlike the more classic played out narrative of Peter struggling to balance his life because of how hard it is to be Spider-Man, it's actually a fresh new subversion where Peter wants to be Spider-Man, and it leads to him being overly reckless in pursuit of greater adventures. Every single scene where Peter decides to be Spider-Man is immediately followed by the consequences that he is choosing to sacrifice. I think Tom in this movie is knocking it out of the park with his performance. His energy is infectious, but also subtle. The dude is a Yaposaurus Rex, but he also doesn't really know what he's doing, and so we get interesting situations where he's trying to act tough, and the other guy is just having to deal with it because the dude has some weird bug powers and he can't help it. I really like the scene where before he attacks the Avengers trying to rob the bank, he takes a second to reposition himself to try to look tough. It's those little moments like that that wordlessly convey the emotional turmoil this version of Spider-Man is trying to get through. I know a lot of people call this movie not comic accurate, and I just have to say, what? I don't think just because Peter has a suit built by Tony Stark, has a best friend to follow him around, and doesn't have an Uncle Ben means that he's a complete assassination of the character. Like, for starters, I think this is the only movie he's had where he's actually being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Even the big villain of the movie would have just robbed one plane if Spider-Man didn't stop him. The brother isn't even city level. And as I've said before, I think that's the most comic accurate thing you can do with him. I even think the way they integrated the classic Stan Lee era Spidey quirks into this movie to be really darn creative. Like how the suit lady voice gives him a reason to talk to himself, how his lenses move to show his emotions, and the fact that he even has the freaking web wings, bruh. And I mean, they even have an adaptation of Amazing Spider-Man 33 to showcase Peter's transformation into the determined Spider-Man we all knew he could be. Like, the movie knows ball and remixes the more shallow stuff because it leads to a more fresh and interesting story while keeping the core of the character faithful. Isn't it interesting to see what it would be like if Peter had an Uncle Ben mentor figure after he already becomes Spider-Man? I think Iron Man in this movie is fantastic. Genuinely, Spider-Man, from the very beginning of his career, has always been with other superheroes he looks up to and has been bouncing off of them for ages. Iron Man is just one of the many forces putting Peter into a corner where he is being asked to stop being Spider-Man. The movie literally is Peter slowly taking off all of the Iron Boy Jr. stuff one by one. He hacks his suit to disable the safety, he isn't even using the tech suit for the final fight, and he outright admits to Tony in front of us that he doesn't think he can be like Tony and is okay with that. Like, bruh, come on! This Peter has also already been doing his superhero shenanigans for quite a while already. And so having his best friend find out 15 minutes into the movie is a really great way to expose to the audience how the status quo is in this universe, while giving more opportunities for high school comedy stuff. The classic character dynamics in this movie aren't gone, they're just once again being reinterpreted in a creative light. It doesn't matter if Flash Thompson is a chud, because he's still enough of a prick to make Peter feel lame about himself. And that's all he needs to be. Liz here is the love interest that Peter thinks will solve all of his problems, and is the ultimate sacrifice he has to make at the end of the movie to do the right thing. I think the entire central message of the movie can be summarized with this one line said to Peter by Tony: "If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it." It's Peter learning to prove he can be a capable superhero not only to those around him, but also to himself. I think that line is just so great, and it's the catalyst for one of the best third acts ever in a Marvel movie. This entire section of the story is, to me, one of the most faithful and inspiring renditions of the character I've ever seen. At this point, Peter has no suit, his mentor doesn't believe in him, the villains he's fighting don't believe in him, and he would get anything and everything he ever wanted if he would just take Liz to homecoming and not do anything stupid. And so for this one and only time, Peter decides to do that. We even get this cute little montage where Aunt May is getting him prepared for the dance and he's practicing a little bit, all happy and chill. All seems like it might work out, and then the music cuts and you see who opens the door. And the tension in this scene is genuinely heart-stopping. Even something as simple as taking a photo together feels uneasy. And you can tell there's a million thoughts going through this man's head. And then we get to the car scene. And oh my gosh, the car scene. In light of the brand new day hype, I'm starting to see some John Watts slander on my timeline. But let me get this straight. Does he make some ugly shots sometimes? Oh, hell yeah. Sometimes they can be pretty chopped. But for this movie, nah. The man is a visionary. I love all the inspirations to other comedies like the Ferris Bueller reference and the many ways Watts will use size and scale for funny jokes. This entire drawn out scene in Toombs' car is comic book perfection. I love that as Toombs is slowly figuring out who Peter is, you can see the red stoplight reflecting on his face, signaling that he noticed a red flag in Peter's story. And after the initial dismissal when Peter says his alibis, turns green when he figures out Peter actually ditched both Liz's party and the decathlon. Oh my gosh, the way Keaton says, "Good old Spider-Man," sends chills down my spine every time. It is such a fantastic moment all around. Peter now has every single piece of information on the table. He knows who the Vulture is, where he lives, what he's planning on doing. He has no suit, a date with his daughter that would be jeopardized if he went after him, and the help of no one. And even with all of this, Peter still decides to put on the mask and be Spider-Man because he thinks he might have the smallest chance of making a difference. If that doesn't scream Spider-Man to you, and I don't know what will. But the amazing character moments don't stop there, because now that Peter's principles are clear, he still needs to reinforce his belief in them. And so we get to go 3 for 3 in awesome scenes when Peter goes under the rubble and has to basically will himself into picking it up. Holy crap, Tom can act. Have I said that before? Whatever, I'll keep saying it. This dude can act. He sounds like a scared puppy here, and it's gut-wrenching every single time that I watch it.
No! Please! Hey, please! I'm down here!
But all this focus on Peter will not make me undersell the biggest sacrifice of the movie. And that was Ned having to say he watched porn to protect Peter. Ned, you're a real one. Your commitment will not be in vain. So yeah, I really love this movie. It's funny, has some really nice color grading, has a unique style of humor that completely ditches the Marvel quips, and an insanely great character arc for our protagonist. The next 2 movies in this trilogy do have some problems, even when I mostly enjoy those movies, but for this one, I basically have nothing to complain about. There are like really tiny nitpicks, like the fact that the movie tells us it takes place 8 years after the Avengers, meaning this movie would take place in 2020 during the pandemic, and we know Infinity War takes place in 2018. Marvel, I don't know if you guys were aware, but Spider-Man is kind of not available after what happened in that movie. The movie also definitely does have above average CGI, but sometimes you can tell it isn't up to standard. Especially sometimes the suit will just look a little too smooth and fake, which is a little bit weird. But yeah, this movie bangs. I mean, this movie has Dylan from Severance asking Spider-Man to do a flip. How can you hate that? So I am going to give Spider-Man Homecoming a very prestigious and deserved 9 out of 10. So when it comes to this trilogy, this is the one everyone says is the worst. And I can kind of agree. But it's still good. First, why don't I go over the problems I have with the movie so you guys know I am not trying to rage bait you guys. I think this movie is paced pretty poorly. The first half specifically is kind of redundant and frustrating to get through. Even my 13-year-old self back when the movie first came out felt this way. It doesn't really get truly great until the big Mysterio scene. And it's a shame because by then 60% of the movie has gone by. Also, the whole plot thread with the Peter tingle is really stupid, and it's not because the concept is bad. They just simply forgot to do anything with it. Legit, Peter misses catching 1 banana, and 2 hours later we're told that this means his powers are malfunctioning? What? Bro. But even with these grievances, I still think this movie has some really well done elements. And so why don't we just run through this movie from the beginning and look at both the good and the bad. So the movie cold opens with a scene of Nick Fury and Maria Hill looking for the source of the stress in the area, and they end up face to face with Quentin Beck, the Mysterio, who was played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And can we just talk about how crazy that is? Having Jake Gyllenhaal play a villain is unbelievable levels of juice. It's like if you got Ryan Gosling or Tom Cruise to play a Marvel villain.
What is that?
Like, it's crazy cracked. It goes without saying, but I have no problems with this casting. Jake is really good at playing psychotic characters that think they are Super Saiyan, and so he nails it here. After that, we have a really trashy high school montage of what happened in the previous 2 movies. And I really like that they did this instead of playing it straight. Not only is it hilarious, but it also does a good job diverting attention away from the tragedies that occurred and more on the quirky ramifications of the 5 age gap difference and how that messes up the school dynamics a bit. Also, by the way, since I'm not reviewing Infinity War or Endgame, I'll just bring this up here. I don't really see Peter using the Iron Spider suit to be a contradiction to Homecoming. Whether or not it was planned or the Russos genuinely cucked John Watts, I obviously have no idea. But as it's presented, I felt it was purposeful. Peter doesn't feel ready to be an Avenger, and Iron Man does. And in Far From Home, they only elaborate more on this subject. I think the best part about the first half of this movie is Peter's interactions with MJ, as they both try to let the other know how they feel to each other. It's really cute. Matter of fact, it feels like everyone in this movie is pulling, because Happy is also in the process of trying to bag May, and the CEO of Sex himself finally proves why he has that status when he gets with Betty after only 1 plane flight. Now that's how it's done. I also really like the central conflict of this movie, because it's literally a meta commentary to what people were saying about the first movie. It's like if Joker 2 was actually self-aware. And you know, not literal doo-doo water. The entire movie this time is about how Peter really doesn't like it that people think he is next in line to be Iron Man and hates being in his shadow. He doesn't yet think he can be an Avengers level hero that stops Avengers level threats, and the arc he goes through is how he grows into a capable hero that can handle that. But first, we get some wacky shenanigans on the plane. I already said how Ned eventually ends up wifing the Huz here, but in the meantime, there is also a supposed love triangle between Peter, MJ, and this weird dude called Brad. This dude is funny as hell. He just pops into this movie and acts like he was always there. Like, who invited Blood here? Blood thinks he's on the team. It's honestly even funnier that he doesn't even show up in the next movie too. The dude is like an NPC you take on your party for the next quest. I mean, look at how he talks here.
She's lying. I don't even know this girl.
Classic MJ, right?
Oh, and also because of the field trip, we get to see more of the teachers, and that's always a positive because they're really funny. I won't lie though, as I've said, this is definitely the roughest part of the movie. I really don't like that Peter outright rejects wanting to help Fury and Beck fight in Prague, just because that's not where his field trip was. The world is gonna end if they don't stop this, Peter. Your field trip is cooked no matter what. And this dodging of his responsibilities gets infuriating the more the movie gets along. And the reason why he does this does fit, and there's a few scenes near the end that recontextualize why he was acting this way, but the execution was not it. Peter didn't even say something like, "Oh man, I really want to go and help you guys, but people will know my identity if I randomly leave. Can you guys help?" It was more like a, "Oh, actually, sorry, I can't help you because I have a field trip and a date with a girl." And of course, the scene everyone talks about in the bus is the worst it gets. It's a rare case where they try to raise tension with a really shallow, contrived excuse. Oh wow, a tall Russian girl asks Peter to undress and Brad walks in to take a picture. Guess Peter has to take the photo off his phone so MJ still loves him. It would have probably been funnier and more heartwarming if MJ just saw the photo and didn't believe it. You know, with the bad guy of this movie being about deceit and illusion and all that. But hey, at least in the opera scene, Peter and MJ have a really nice moment of chemistry. As a whole, giving them more screen time together is a net positive. I like how they redefine MJ's edge from the source material and turn it into a quirk that secretly serves doubly as her coping mechanism to seem tough to others. And bouncing her off with Peter, who uses conversation and high energy as his way of hiding his insecurities, leads to an interesting dynamic. So anyway, Peter leaves the opera he sets up for the class, and so he has an excuse to stop the fire elemental without his friends in danger. But MJ leaves because of her growing suspicions of what Peter is up to, and as a result, Betty and Ned also leave. This Night Monkey set piece works for me personally because even though we know Peter is obviously not going to die, it's still tense because Peter needs to save Ned and Betty and keep himself looking like an off-brand ripoff of Spider-Man so people don't connect the dots on his true identity. Because that would be really bad for him, wouldn't it? However, the scene ends really weirdly because Mysterio tells Spider-Man that it's too late and the fire elemental is going to destroy everything. And so he hypes himself up like he's going to sacrifice himself and blow the dude up. But he just lands on the ground and stands right back up as if it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, bro, then why the heck were you hyping it up like that? But anyway, he's alive, and so he tells Fury that they need to go somewhere else in another state to look at more seismic activity. And before he leaves, asks Peter to go have a drink with him. Non-alcoholic, of course. This Peter is a good boy. After a talk, Peter thinks Tony gave Edith to him just so that he can give it to someone else, and so he gives it to Quentin. And yeah, that's really stupid. Again, this is a good arc for him to have, and we're about to get to the scenes that explore this aspect of him much better. But writing is really important. Even if Peter was right here and Tony wanted to give the glasses to him so he could pick the correct successor, why would you go for the guy you literally met yesterday? You don't need to pick someone to give the glasses to today. You can take your time on it, bro. But hey, if there's one good thing about this, is that after this point, I basically have zero complaints about the rest of the movie. We're back to peak, and it starts right away once Peter leaves the bar and Mysterio has that big celebration party with his coworkers. I've already said how much I like Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie, but the actual character of Mysterio here I think serves as a great natural escalation from the Vulture in the last movie. We've gone from a villain that's doing what's best for his family with less than ideal means to a spiteful nerd that will do whatever is necessary to get what he wants. I also just want to say that that's exactly how I want most of my Spider-Man villains to feel like. So the trip gets canceled. Boo. But before they leave back home the next day, Peter asks MJ if they want to go for a walk. Yay! The scene where MJ figures out Peter's identity is very cute. It's exactly what I was talking about, where both people think the other is much more confident than they really let on. And I think MJ only noticing all the clues because she likes him is also adorable. Gosh, man, these two are just so cute. Also, when they find out Mysterio is actually evil and gonna hunt them both down, MJ says this.
Joking with me like you're 100% serious because it's not funny.
No, I'm not joking.
Because I was only like 67% sure.
67%? As in 6-7. I also like that when Quentin Beck finds out that Peter knows and he has to kill him, that he doesn't revel or enjoy the fact he has to. It kind of enriches the character quite a bit. Peter tries to go and warn Nick Fury about Mysterio's true intentions, but turns out, oh my gosh, that was actually Mysterio himself. And now we get to the Mysterio scene. In case y'all thought John Watts fell off after Homecoming, this is your reminder that he still knows what's up. This is easily the most visually striking scene of the entire movie. And I love that it kind of plays out like a horror movie. And it even has a little bait and switch at the end. Mwah. Chef's kiss. And reasonably, due to this really haunting psychological torture he just went through, Peter suffers a mental breakdown in front of Happy. And did I mention Tom Holland can act? Again, I think the reason why this works so well on me is that this is the burden Peter has been feeling since Civil War, and he's finally letting it all out. This is the moment Peter finally learns to come into his own, and this is also what recontextualizes the entire first half of the movie into Peter hiding from his responsibilities because of his fear of not being good enough instead of his selfishness. Again, I really struggle to agree with the Iron Boy Jr. complaints when anything related to Tony Stark has always been Peter attempting to push him away from himself. The only way I can see why people don't like this is if they simply just don't like Tony being involved in Spider-Man's life for no reason other than it's not normal. And I mean, sure, but I will always welcome change and fresh new takes on characters for interesting new stories. The comics are still there. They will probably never not be the best way to experience Spider-Man's original journey. So instead of just making a one-on-one adaptation that's bound to be worse, I much prefer the movie to take bigger swings like this. Also, I know there are some people who think the Back in Black needle drop contradicts the very theme Peter was supposed to have of stepping away from Tony's shadow, but again, I disagree. I really think it's simple. The Back in Black song was the very first song played in the very first Iron Man right at the opening of the movie. It's clearly supposed to represent new beginnings. And Happy isn't gonna play Blitzkrieg Pop or something. Why would he? If they played a song that played during a cool Iron Man moment like Robot Rock or something, then yeah, I would agree with you guys. But as it stands, I don't see it that way. But anyway, Peter is now Spider-Man officially. And he has a new suit. I think it's cool how the suit is a nod to the original Amazing Fantasy colors. Apparently when he was first designed, the blue was supposed to be black until later when they changed it, and so I thought it was a nice touch. And now that it's the final fight, I once again really like how Jon Watts directs this. I like how he visualizes speed and kinetic energy on his shots. It really makes Spider-Man seem like an acrobat. I also am a fan of the color. The blue and red synths of the drones as Spider-Man is inside the illusions are like eye candy to me. And of course, it ends with the spectacular final scene. Again, I must state, Jon Watts has the sauce. This is one of the coolest fight scenes I've ever seen in a superhero movie, period. I mean, listen to how even the sound design goes quiet, except for the stuff Peter is hitting. So, Mysterio tries one more bait and switch and fails. Peter and MJ finally confess to each other. Let's go! Peter has a final swing that, not gonna lie, is so much better than the one from No Way Home. And then the movie is over. Although, of course, this is an MCU movie, and so we get a post-credit scene that sets up a stinger for the next one. And oh golly Jay, I gotta say this is one of the most fire setups you can do for a Spider-Man story. They even get J.K. Simmons back. Heck yeah, man. It's kind of baller to outright end your Spider-Man movie by saying that the villain won. And to this day, they haven't retconned or had a scene saying it didn't matter yet, which I respect a lot. There's also a second scene that shows Nick Fury was an imposter, but that one doesn't really matter. So yeah, as a whole, Far From Home has some rough parts for sure. I will not deny it. But it also does so much right that I refuse to believe that it's the worst Spider-Man movie like some people have claimed it to be. The movie never lets up on the laughs. The chemistry with the cast is awesome. The character growth Peter has is just as inventive as always. And the third act kicks butt. Like, come on, guys. Isn't this movie fun? Guys, I swear, we can come to an agreement, right? Don't slide me out, please. And so with all of that said, I think I'm going to give Spider-Man Far From Home a 7 out of 10.
That's a magic number.
So this is probably the movie on here I have the least to say about. I feel like everyone has already said everything there is to say about this movie over the last 5 years. This movie's really good. Anyone who was excited for the movie back then will know that's probably a movie experience you're never really gonna forget. It has been such an influential movie for the state of superhero movies today. And I'm not gonna lie, it has mostly been for the worse. But that's not this movie's fault. It's the fault of everything else trying to copy this without understanding the reasons it worked as well as it did. And those reasons are sincerity and an actual plot reason for its inclusion. The fan service in this movie I thought was very tasteful and hype because they fit in pretty well. The movie avoids feeling like a brain rot cameo fest by still being first and foremost about our main Peter Parker. He still has like triple the screen time of the other Spider-Man in this movie, and the legacy villains are a little reference cherry on top. If these were just random bad guys from alternate universes we never met, the story would still work. The point is that Peter doesn't recognize them or have any reason to help them. but he helps them anyway. It's the quintessential Spider-Man scenario. I like this conflict for Peter after Far From Home told us that he's now a more confident individual with more resolve in his principles. I know some people don't like it that it takes Aunt May convincing him at first to save the villains, but I think it's more interesting and realistic if there's a struggle. If the villains showed up and the movie was just about finding them and curing them, then it would be a lot more boring to me personally than the movie sitting down and saying, is Peter doing the right thing? The beauty of moral dilemmas is that since the answer is unclear, it is way more engaging for a story as opposed to asking if Spider-Man is gonna beat the villain. Spoilers, guys. He beats the villain. I like how even the fights themselves are framed around something else other than just Peter beating him to keep us engaged. Take the first fight with DougDoug, for example. In this fight, Peter needs to save the head of MIT while also not making himself look bad because he's there to try to get his friends to go to college. These additional balances of problems he needs to juggle do wonders for keeping me locked into the movie. However, as I've said, to make this type of story work with this many cameos, you need it to be sincere. And I'm not gonna lie, some of these actors really feel like they didn't want to be here. I think Otto, the Green Goblin, Electro, the Spider-Man, heck, even J. Jonah Jameson are all putting their best foot forward. I'm not talking about them at all. I have no issues with them. But the Lizard? And Sandman? Yeah, what's up with them, bro? They're like always in CGI forms, and it feels like they're not even recording in the same room. Like even in the scenes where they become live action, Watts just has to use deleted scenes from their old movies to make it look like they're there? Are you serious? Like at that point, why did you even bother to show up? At least though, the ones that are there and are trying are really good. The Green Goblin here is stealing the show so thoroughly. Norman here is the final stepping stone in Tom's journey into fighting more deranged individuals. First, there was the down on his luck family man that was trying to avoid conflict and found less than ideal means to provide, into the spiteful geek that will do anything he needs to get in his way. And now there's a guy who is genuinely evil and he likes it. It makes a ton of sense to have this type of villain be the focus of the Spider-Man movie, where he is trying to believe everyone has the possibility of redemption. It has always stuck with me the way he smiles and laughs after Peter starts clocking him in the apartment. Willem Dafoe's performance is really great at giving me actual goosebumps. I thought he was by far the funniest character in the first Raimi movie, and so it's crazy that now I get to say he's the most unnerving Spider-Man villain after this one. I actually like Green Goblin here more than in his own movie. Yeah, I said it. I also don't entirely think Watts is washed here. I really like that opening long take he has near the beginning of the movie. I think he still knows how to convey energy by moving the camera in creative ways, such as the entire set piece with Peter in the mirror dimension. This scene alone would have been the highlight of most MCU movies with how visually out there it is. However, the line Peter says at the end about math being better than magic is a little corny. That was a little lame. But hey, at least the way Watts does the little montage of Peter fixing Otto with his gang of villains wasn't corny. I really liked that. And the scene with May was very impactful and necessary for giving a direct consequence to Peter doing the right thing. We know this would have never happened if Peter didn't go out of his way to do the right thing. And even Aunt May knows that, which is why she gave the great power, great responsibility line. I also like that they used the original written version of the line from Amazing Fantasy, said by Stan Lee. It's nice to give the source material a little bit more love. Man, this scene always kills me, especially with Tom Holland's awesome performance that steals the show. Hey, did you know that Tom can act? Then, once the other Spider-Man join the picture, I like how Watts handles them. They serve Peter's narrative, and they don't take the focus away from him. In universe, it's explained that his involvement with the Avengers means he naturally knows how to work with the team better than the other two, which is a nice way to make it make sense. And of course, the movie doesn't ignore these returning legacy characters either. I think it's especially great what they did to Andrew Garfield's Peter. I like him here more than in his own movies. Yeah, I said it. I also like Toby here, but granted, he doesn't really do as much, and it makes sense because most people already like him and are just excited he's here. And I mean, I'm one of those people, you know? As a result, I think I was more invested in Andrew here, basically getting to redeem himself from his mistakes with Gwen and his early spider life. Toby does have his own cute moments, like his reunion with Otto, but they just don't hit as hard for me. I found this entire third act with the three Spider Bros working together to be a whole lot of fun. Like, what a good time, bruh. It's just like having a good night out with the homies. And I think it's absolutely fitting and heartbreakingly in character for Peter to sacrifice his identity to save the world. And it's also a double whammy having to see him not tell MJ at the diner afterwards because he thinks it would be what's best for her. This storyline is also an adaptation from the comics, and it's pretty famous for being pretty bad. So the fact they made it work here so well makes me like it even more. I would much rather have a Spider-Man adaptation attempt to remix previous bad storylines like One More Day and now the upcoming Brand New Day events, instead of just trying to be a cheap knockoff of a great story that I can always just look at the source material to enjoy. I know comparing this movie to something like a fan film is pretty unfair, but the reason Lotus even happened is because there was an outcry for this Spider-Man not being faithful enough. Because even though he has comic accurate principles, they quote lines from the comics verbatim, they adapt literal comic stories bar for bar, and have actors that are the correct ages to look the part, people were still mad because he didn't build his suit on his own. Like, guys, seriously, should that be the priority? I think the criticisms on how this movie looks are much more valid. This is easily John Watts' ugliest film, and it's probably for a lot of reasons. The pandemic obviously played a huge factor, but also it was an unfortunate hodgepodge of the VFX artists starting to get overworked and the Marvel pump going on double time. I'm not entirely excusing Watts too, by the way. Some of the stuff here really is just not as good as before. Most of all of the final swing at the end was legit some of the worst motion tracking I've ever seen. That looks so bad. But I also want to play devil's advocate and defend it a little bit, because I've seen a lot of comparisons to the Batman due to them releasing 3 months apart and talking about how much better the Batman is. And you're right, but the Batman was lucky that it didn't need much CGI. Because guys, let's be honest, when it needed to use CGI, it looked just as uncanny. But yeah, I think this movie was a great time at the movies. And it's just as smart as the previous two. And so I would give Spider-Man No Way Home an 8 out of 10. So as a whole, I think we have a pretty good Spider-Man trilogy on our hands. A lot of people say Far From Home is the worst one, but I gotta say, watching them back to back, they all feel really similar. I really like this Tom Holland guy, and so maybe it would be cool to see what you guys think of him too. Because as I've said a million times, I don't know what I'm talking about. Could this be the day Spider-Man fans achieve world peace? Probably not. I already hear the missile strikes coming. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye.